Hello and welcome. This is the Thermaltake CTE T500 Air, and it offers one of the most ingenious case designs on the market. It might not exactly suit everyone's taste, but it is a large full tower case with 3 pre-installed fans and truly outstanding features as far as mounting options, etc. are concerned. This much can already be revealed. We are dealing with high-end quality here. Surprisingly, the price isn't even particularly high. Currently, we are looking at about $140 to $160 US. This makes the case kinda affordable given the fact it's actually an upper-class model. With today's CTE T500 Air, Thermaltake does a lot of things very differently than you'd come to expect from a classic standard PC case out there. As I said, a lot is done brilliantly here, but of course, not all aspects are perfect. Ultimately, should you consider buying this case? As far as what comes included, among all the things, our usual screws, cable ties, motherboard speaker, etc. Also included are what seems like 2 random case parts, which we'll talk about later. Then we are also getting a very detailed and well laid out manual. Now, as far as the aesthetics, the overall look is concerned, I really like it. The build quality is actually on a high-end level, I'd say. Therefore, close to everything here is constructed out of thick, sturdy steel, top-notch. There's also a TG tempered glass version available of this case, but I specifically chose the Air version for the best possible airflow, and we are definitely getting that. Of course, we are dealing with a full tower model here, so we are no longer talking of compact. This in turn allows us to fit lots and lots of stuff in here, including common motherboard form factors, even eATX. The special feature here surely has to be the modified case layout. The design utilizes a 90-degree rotation of the motherboard, meaning that the main components such as the CPU and GPU really are the focus in terms of good airflow. As is well known, warm air rises up, and the pre-installed fan at the top is of great assistance for this. A bit old-fashioned but still okay, both side panels are kept in place by 2 thumb screws each. The tempered glass, 4mm in thickness by the way, comes with a slight tint. The right side panel features a rather obvious mesh cutout. That's because a fan can be mounted onto one of the brackets behind the motherboard tray. We do get a dust filter for that, which latches onto the side panel and is additionally held in place by magnets. A total of 3 fans are already pre-installed, each of them 140mm. One sits at the front, one at the rear, the final one at the top. Admittedly, there could have been 1 or 2 more fans for us to work with, but we can't ignore the case's price. In general, within this CTE T500, it feels like fans can virtually go anywhere. So except for the obvious locations, such as the front, rear, and top, one fits on the PSU cover, alternatively with the cover and hard drive cage removed, one on the bottom of the case, and as already mentioned, one on the right behind the side panel. We do see this strong trend carry over to the radiator support. There is space for up to a 360 or 420mm radiator at the front, also a 360 or 280mm one on the rear, and a 120mm one at the top if you need that to happen. However, you should still be made aware of the max radiator thickness of 54mm at the front and 41mm on the rear. There are dust filters everywhere for all the places mentioned, so there's a large removable one at the bottom, behind the front mesh panel, there's one below the top cover, and finally we also get one for the rear directly behind the mesh. There's a sufficient number of cutout holes for us to make use of surrounding the motherboard mounting area, although not all of them come equipped with rubber grommets. When moving to the back of the case, the first thing we see is quite a bit of room to tuck away cables. Cable management should be made much easier thanks to many of those Velcro strap checkpoints. A maximum of 180mm long power supplies may be installed in here. What certainly caught my eye were those 2 special brackets onto which either a single 3.5-inch drive can be mounted, respectively, or 2 2.5-inch drives onto each bracket, respectively. Of course, there's also a conventional hard drive cage. Either two 3.5 or 2.5 inch drives can be installed in it. Now, if we loosen 2 screws back here, and then 2 additional ones of the front part of the PSU cover, one of the case's elements can be removed completely. By loosening even more screws on the bottom, in theory, even the hard drive cage can go. Now, either a fan can be installed instead of it, or you first take care of that cosmetic hole back there by using that wall bracket that was included. In addition to that, you could now make use of the second part included. This, in fact, is a pump bracket for custom water cooling setups. It's a well thought out concept, I gotta admit. I think it's really nice that the fan or radiator brackets can be unscrewed and taken out for more convenient installation. I also noticed that the brackets can either be aligned to go either inwards or outwards, so that we can configure and install everything according to our wishes and plans. It all even fits perfectly with the dust filters without any clearance issues. Very well thought out and measured indeed. But what is it like to install hardware into the CTE T500 Air? Were there any inconveniences I had to go through? No, actually, everything went well and smoothly. Since the case is so spacious with its full tower dimensions, assembling a system was quite the pleasant experience. Fortunately, the 90-degree rotation of the motherboard does not cause any issues when it comes to AIO liquid coolers. The radiator's tubes are still over the pump's level, as they should be in a best-case scenario. Now, because the graphics card is installed hanging within the system, the ever-increasing issue of heavy, sagging cards disappears. A drawback of the 90-degree rotated layout, however, is that the motherboard's I/O, while the ports and cables basically are nicely hidden and come out bundled, well, the drawback is that when having to plug in or unplug something quickly, it's an extremely impractical design. If you need to do that, the top cover needs to be removed every time. Apart from that, the case, of course, offers an almost endless amount of room to work with. My embarrassing test system surely won't be able to fill this case. It's probably worth mentioning that the case comes with a front USB Type-C port. In my opinion, it's what I'd consider mandatory these days, but some case manufacturers still decide to omit it. Now, if you haven't noticed yet, I moved the pre-installed front fan to the rear for my test assembly because I wanted to mount my AIO as high up there as possible. The pre-installed Thermaltake fans don't come with any RGB lighting, but can definitely be described as pleasantly quiet in operation. There's certainly enough room for cable management, so much so that I even got into a bit of a cable frenzy. Sadly, I still am incapable of performing a good cable management job, especially when in a rush. Probably one of my trademarks, I'd say. Conclusion. Only once I got the chance to physically deal with the CTE T500 Air, I was able to comprehend what we customers are being offered here. Admittedly, I was a bit skeptical at first about the 90-degree motherboard rotation, but once you are ready to say goodbye to the classic layout, you have to admit that this centralized layout has some major advantages when it comes to airflow. Still, I find the mentioned motherboard I/O dilemma a bit unfavorable when something needs to be plugged in or unplugged. Apart from that, everything else within this CTE T500 Air has been thought out almost too shockingly well. Not only does everything fit so incredibly well in here, but the choice of materials is also top-notch. I'm firmly stating that we are dealing with an obvious high-end case here, but at a much more customer-friendly price point when keeping the overall package in mind. Without the slightest doubt, I can recommend buying the Thermaltake CTE T500 Air. With that said, thank you all for watching, and until the next one.